Good morning, friends. Let us start today's session. In yesterday's or the previous session, we had discussed about a few basic concepts of finite element analysis, like what is finite element analysis, what are the different methods to solve any engineering problem, and what are the different types of analysis that we use to solve the engineering problems. And we have discussed about the uh, steps to solve the finite element problem. Okay, now we are moving forward for the few more concepts. In today's session, we'll be going to discuss the natural or intrinsic coordinate system, and we'll be going to discuss the interpolation formulation. What is exactly interpolation formulation? Also, we'll be discussing about the elements and the element connectivity, how the element connectivity can be established. So let us start the session. So first part in our discussion in the previous session was the steps to solve the finite element analysis problem. Okay, so very first step is discretization. We have discussed that very first step is discretization. So discretization means dividing the geometry into some finite number of parts. Those parts are called as elements. These are the subsystems, or we can call it as sub-regions for the entire geometry. As we know that we formulate some mathematical equation at element level, and then we will solve those equations at element level and we club it to find out the complete solution. So let us take a tour of how the elements are prepared. So there are various types of element, like 1D element. Okay, 1D element means that these are the simplest type of elements. 1D elements are the simplest type of element in which the degree of freedom is 1. That means they can move in only one coordinate. So these are having two nodes and 1 degree of freedom. So these are called as 1D spar element. The example is 1D spar element, in which the degree of freedom for each node is 1. For each node, the degree of freedom is 1. That is called as 1D spar element. Then these kind of elements can be used as in truss application. So while calculating the truss kind of thing, which is most common in finite element analysis, in case of truss applications, we can formulate the 1D spar element. Then next type of elements are 2D elements. Next type of elements are 2D elements. You can easily guess that the degree of freedom for this is 2 in this for these 2D elements. These are called as higher order elements. The examples are triangular, for which there are 3 nodes, quadrilateral, for which there are 4 nodes, triangular, quadratic, 6 nodes, quadrilateral, quadratic, 8 nodes. So likewise, you can increase the complexity for 3D element, 2D elements. Then another type of elements you can form is 3D elements, in which we have tetrahedron linear having 4 nodes, rectangular prism having 8 nodes, prism having 6 nodes, or arbitrary hexahedron having 8 nodes. So these are the 3D elements. So whenever you go for any application software for finite element analysis, you will find the material library over there. So that in that material library, you will be getting number of element types, and depending upon your application, you can choose, or you are having liberty to choose the various types of elements that you want for your particular application. Now we'll be going to discuss into one-dimensional linear modeling of the structure. We are limiting ourselves, or to start with, we'll be going to discuss one-dimensional linear modeling. This concept is used to help us uh, in establishing the element connectivity. As we know that the simplest form of analysis is involved in one finite element analysis is one-dimensional spar element. Okay, so these kind of element, 1D spar element, can sustain the load and deflection only in one direction. They can sustain load or deflection only in one direction. Okay, so that's why we say that the degree of freedom is 1. So let us draw the diagram. So this is a tapered bar which is fixed at one end, and we have applied some force on the other end. So load is along one direction, and the deflection that you will be getting because of the application of load is also in one direction. Okay, so this is one of the simplest problem that we can solve. But now this is an entire geometry. We need to discretize it. So how to discretize it? This tapered bar can be discretized into a step bar having certain number of elements. How to do this? So I'll draw the tapered bar first. So this is my tapered bar on which force is applied. Now this tapered bar can be discretized as step bar. This is my one element, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So this bar I have discretized into 5 number of elements. Now these 5 elements, then I can solve it for my given equation. So this tapered bar, this is your original model. This I can also draw as in the form of elements. So this is first element, this element, and it is made up of 2 nodes. These points are called as nodes. Then we have second element, third, fourth, and fifth. So these are the elements. Now we'll number the nodes. So this node number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you can see that each element is having 2 nodes, and each element is having those nodes shared by the other elements. If we want to draw the displacement and loads, so Q1 F1 is the load and the displacement at node number 1. We can say that Q2 F2 at 2, Q3 F3 at 4, 3, Q4 F4, and likewise. So as I said at the beginning, this is the simplest type of element, 1D spar element, who's having loads and displacement only in one direction. So Q indicates displacement of the node and F indicates the load or force at node. Okay. So now our task is to find out these loads and forces in terms of matrices. So Q, the displacement along each degree of freedom, can be represented as in the matrix form as Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and Q5. So this is in the matrix form. You can write the transpose of this also, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and Q5 transpose. So in this fashion, you can write this load displacement in the matrix form, and this matrix is called as your global displacement matrix. Global displacement matrix, which give you the values for the displacement at each node. Okay, so this is your displacement matrix. Next is your forces. On the similar lines or similar grounds, we can write force matrix as F1, F2, F3, F4, and F5. Or we can write the transpose as F1, F2, F3, F4, and F5. So this matrix, this force matrix is called as global load vector. This is called as global load vector. So now why these are called as global element displacement matrix or global load vector? The reason is, the answer is F1 and F2, F3, F4 are the displacements at your nodal level. Okay, but we are not interested in the displacement at nodal level. We want what is the displacement of the entire structure after the application of the load. So that is done, that can be done with the help of combining all these loads and combining all these displacement. Okay, so that's why we write it in the form of global load vectors or in the form of global displacement matrix or displacement vector. Now you can see that each element is having two nodes and their connectivity must be established in between these two nodes. Okay, so that connectivity is established with the help of element connectivity table. There are two types of numbering happen for the nodes. One is local numbering and second one is global numbering. So this is called as local numbering. So here you see that one element which is indicated by E enclosed in the circle. This is the sign convention to write the number of the element. And these are the 1 and 2 are the nodes for the element. Now we'll try to establish the element connectivity table for the structure, for your element. So we are having element E, and in second column we'll be having node number. Okay, so we are having 5 number of elements. So we write 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so node numbers, for each element we are having two local nodes, 1 and 2, as shown in this diagram. For each element we are having two local nodes, 1 and 2. These numbers we give it as local. Okay, so for element number 1, the local nodes are 1, 2. For element number 2, the local numbers are 2, the global numbers are 2, 3. Then 3, 4, 4, 5, and 5, 6. So these are called as global number. So let me explain once again by going back to the diagram. We are having this structure. We are having 5 number of elements and 6 nodes. So each element is having 2 nodes. We are number these nodes as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we are trying to establish a connectivity between these nodes and the elements. With the elements, to be very precise, with the help of nodes. So we are having element number E and local node numbers 1 and 2. For each element, there are the local numbers indicated by 1 and 2. But for the global level, if this is the element number 1, we indicate the global numbers as 1 and 2. For element number 2, we'll be indicating the node numbers as 2 and 3. For 3, it is 3 and 4. So if this is the case, so 2 for element, let us say for element number 2, for element number 2, the local node numbers are 2 and 3. But, the global numbers are 2 and 3. But the local numbers are 1 and 2 only. So these are your global numbers and these are your local numbers. Again, for element number, let us say 5. So 5 number, we are having global node numbers as 5 and 6. But the local numbers, if I want to find out for element number 5, the local numbers will be 1 and 2 only. So that relationship is established with the help of this element connectivity table. 1 and 2 at local level, and this indicates the global node number. So in this element connectivity table, nodes of the elements are represented in two forms: local numbers and global numbers. So the local node numbers of each element would be 1 and 2. And if we consider element number 3, it is seen that the global node numbers for element number 3 will be 3 and 4. And the corresponding global node numbers will, local node numbers will be 1 and 2. So for these 3 and 4 global node numbers, corresponding local node numbers are 1 and 2. So this connectivity established the global to local relationship, and this concept help us to simplify in the formulation of individual element matrix, which can be used to combine and formulate the global matrix, global stiffness matrix, to be very precise. Okay, so why this element connectivity table is important? It is important to find out the relationship between global and local node numbers, and to formulate the matrices at local level, and then to combine it at global level, or at global to formulate it global stiffness matrix. So this is one concept: element connectivity and the relationship between your local and global node numbers. Now next concept is your natural or intrinsic coordinate system. Natural or intrinsic coordinate system. So we consider the typical example of node or element having node numbers 1 and 2, and then we'll establish the relationship between. So we generally represent it in your global coordinate system in X form, but it will be easy for us if you make it in natural coordinate system and to establish a shape function. Now, if you remember, the shape function can be used to establish the interpolation function, how your field variable is varying within the element. So that concept we'll discuss later on, but let us draw the elements, the same element into global coordinate system and intrinsic or natural coordinate system. So we are having this element E having nodes 1 and 2 and one intermediate point, any point on the P. We represent it with the help of global coordinates. So this is x minus x1, this is x1, and this distance is x. So entire distance is x1. From this point to 1 is x1. So it is x minus x1. And at point 2, the distance is x2. So at some point, the distance of node 1 is x1 and node 2 is x2. At any point P, the distance is x. And from node 1 to P, it is x minus x1. So listen carefully. It is the representation having in global coordinate system. So this is your first diagram. Now we will be representing the same element and nodes into natural coordinate system. So we will represent it, the same element E in natural coordinate system. So we are having point P. So in natural coordinate system, which is represented by the coordinates as zeta, I request you to turn off your microphones, please. Zeta is equal to -1 to +1. Okay. At middle point, zeta value is 0. Okay. So I can write it as this distance as zeta. Since it is -1 to 0, the distance is zeta plus 1. You can guess that this much distance is 1 plus zeta. So that's why zeta plus 1. And the total distance is 2. Again, it is quite easy to guess. -1 to +1, -1 to 0, 1 unit, and 1 to 0 to +1 is another unit. So this is the representation in natural coordinate system. So the same system we have represented in natural coordinate system. So it is a convenient system and which help us in formulating again the individual element matrix, which can be again then used and to use for the combine, to formulate the combine or global stiffness matrix. Okay, so we'll write the equation or we'll find out the relationship between these global coordinates x and this natural coordinate zeta. So this is our task. For that we'll write length of element in natural coordinate system. So NCS stands for natural coordinate system upon length of element in global coordinate system. This is a ratio to the distance of point P from node 1, which is equal to distance of point P from node 1 in natural coordinate system upon distance of point P from node 1 in global coordinate system. So this ratio we have to find out. Now let us say length of the element in natural coordinate system. So what is the length of the entire element in natural coordinate system? It is 2 units upon the length of the same element in global coordinate system. So the length of this element is x2 minus x1. So this distance minus this distance. So x2 minus x1. This is one ratio. Then distance of point P, the P point that we have defined from node 1 in natural coordinate system. So distance of this point P from node 1 in natural coordinate system is zeta plus 1, this distance, zeta plus 1 upon distance of point P from node 1 in global coordinate system. So it is x minus x1, this distance, x minus x1. Okay, so formulated this thing. So what we have done so far, we have considered one element having two nodes, and we have considered one intermediate point. So we have established the distances from node 1, 2, and from one end to this point P. Okay, so and we have formulated two ratios, length of the element in natural coordinate system and length of element in global coordinate system, which is equal to distance of point P from node 1 in natural coordinate and from in global coordinate system. Okay, so based on that we have got this ratio. Now we just put some mathematical formulations. So to confirm the validity, we'll perform, then we'll write it zeta equal to 2x minus x1 upon x2 minus x1 minus 1. So this is, by this equation, we have formulated the relationship between the global coordinates x and the natural coordinate zeta. Okay, so this is our intention. Now let us formulate the continuity of this equation, and this is very important one. We will be using this equation once again. Okay, so at x equal to x1, zeta is equal to 2 x1 minus x1. So at x equal to x1 we are writing upon x2 minus x1 minus 1, which is equal to minus 1. So at x equal to x1, zeta is equal to minus 1, and at x equal to x2 we can write 2 x2 minus x1 upon x2 minus x1 which is equal to plus 1. So we can easily say that zeta is equal to minus 1 at x equal to x1, okay, and zeta is equal to plus 1 at x equal to x2. So that gives a validity or confirmation to this diagram. At x equal to x1, zeta is equal to, at x equal to x1, zeta is equal to minus 1. At x equal to x2, zeta is equal to plus 1. So that is the validity that we have got from this natural or intrinsic coordinate system. And you must pay attention to this relationship which we have established between the global coordinate system and intrinsic or natural coordinate system. The reason behind formulating this equation or this relationship is that it will be easy for us to represent it, the elements, into individual matrix, and then it will be easy for us to combine it into the global form. So this is one important concept that you must be able to understand. The next important thing is your shape function. It is the shape function. So we'll be deriving the shape function in natural coordinate system. Now what is, first let us understand the shape function. Consider this element 1, element E having nodes 1 and 2. You will be establishing the value of field variable at nodes, because you will be applying the field variables at the nodes only. Let us say if you are applying some load over here, or if it is a cantilever beam, you will be fixing this node and you will be applying some load over here, force over here. Okay, so you know the values of the field variable at these nodes. So field variable means, let us say, displacement. If you are fixing this node, you know that the displacement at this node is going to be 0. You are applying this load, some load over here, so you will be knowing what will be the displacement. Okay, with the equation available with you, you can find out the displacement. But what about the intermediate point? What about if somewhere the point is lies between this? What about those points? What will be the displacement of these points? So to find out the displacement between the intermediate point, we will be using the function called as shape function. And this shape function we'll be using in natural coordinate system, and then we'll be trying to establish a relationship or establish a validity of that shape function in your global coordinate system also. Okay, so you must remember the shape function in layman's language. We know we can predict the field variable, the values of field variable in at your nodes, but to establish the value or the magnitude of field variables in between the nodes or in between the element, at any point in between the element, you can use the shape function. Okay. Now the shape function n1 and n2 in natural coordinate form can be developed in the figure below. So I'll explain this figure. So you are having this element E, the nodes 1 and 2. The shape function n1 is indicated like this. This is the shape function. This is the line representing the shape function n1. And the same element E having nodes 1, 2, the shape function is n2, which is represented by this line. So these are the diagrams indicated by shape function, indicating shape function n1 and shape function n2. So n1 is equal to 1 minus zeta by 2 and n2 is equal to 1 plus zeta by 2. Now we are going to find out how these values are coming out. So we know that the equation of the line is equal to y is equal to mx plus c, where your m is the slope. Now for this shape function n1, for shape function n1, slope is minus 1 because the line is declining. Okay, so it is minus 1 by 2. We put this slope into the equation of this line, n1 is equal to minus 1 by 2 zeta plus c, okay, and putting the values of n1. Okay, remember please, y is equal to mx plus c, m is your slope. For this line, slope is minus 1 by 2. Okay, so for n1, we are writing n1 in terms of, in the form of y. So n1 equal to minus 1 by 2 zeta plus c in the shape coordinate, natural coordinate system. Now for zeta is equal to minus 1 at this point, zeta is equal to minus 1, what is the value of n1? N1 value is varying from this point 0 to 1. So at this point, at zeta is equal to minus 1, the value of n1 is 1. Got my point? So this is varying shape function. So at zeta is equal to minus 1, n1 is equal to 1. So putting these values, 1 into zeta is equal to minus 1, we get minus 1 by 2 plus c. Okay. Now from this equation, we can find out c as 1 by 2. Putting the value of c into equation, we'll get n1 is equal to minus 1 by 2 zeta plus 1 by 2. Okay. Once again, I'll explain you. Just concentrate on this diagram and the concept of shape function. Shape function help us to establish a relationship or establish the values of field variable intermediately in between the element. Now here the shape function is varying like this. Shape function n1 is represented by this line, okay, which is the general equation of line y is equal to mx plus c. For this line, the slope is minus 1 by 2. We have put that slope value into this equation, and we will calculate at zeta is equal to minus 1, n1 value is 1. Putting these values, we'll get the value of c as 1 by 2, and putting this value of c into this equation, so we'll get minus 1 by 2 zeta plus 1 by 2. Okay, or we take out zeta over here, n1 zeta is equal to 1 minus zeta by 2. That is your equation number 1. So shape function n1 in terms of zeta is 1 minus zeta by 2. Okay. Similarly, from figure B. Now from figure B, slope is 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2. Since the line is having positive slope, we are having slope plus 1 by 2. Put these values over here, and then putting the value of n2 as 0. So at zeta is equal to minus 1, look over here, at zeta is equal to value minus 1, what will be the value of n2? It is 0. Okay, so we are assuming some common condition. In the previous case also, at zeta is equal to minus 1, we have calculated n1 value, and zeta is equal to minus 1, we will be calculating now the n2 value, which is 0 now over here. Putting this value and performing the same exercise, we'll get the shape function as n2 is equal to 1 plus zeta by 2. So this is how you can formulate the shape functions n1 and n2. n1 is 1 minus zeta by 2, and n2 is 1 plus zeta by 2. Okay. Now moving forward, now we have formulated the shape function. Now we'll try to establish the relationship or how your field variable can be described. Now once the shape functions are defined, the linear displacement field within the element can be written in terms of the nodal displacement, the linear displacement field. So this is the linear displacement field, which can be written in terms of nodal displacement as q1 and q2. So q1 is the nodal displacement at node 1, and q2 is the displacement at node 2. So we'll write the equation as u is equal to n1 q1 plus n2 q2. Now what is n1? n1 is the shape function at node 1, and n2 is the shape function at node 2, where q1 and q2 are the displacement are node 1 and node 2. The same equation we can write in the matrix form as u is equal to nq. So q we can write as q1 q2, the transpose it as this one, and n is equal to n1 and n2. This q is called as element displacement vector. In the previous slides we had discussed, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 as global displacement vector, but this is element displacement vector because we are considering only a single element, that is E. Now, let us say N1 is equal to 1 minus zeta by 2. We have formulated it at 1 previously. At zeta is equal to, let us say zeta is equal to minus 1. Zeta value is equal to minus 1. Putting this value into this equation, we'll get 1. Okay. So, and N2 is 1 plus zeta. So, N2 is 0. So, what we can conclude over here by putting at node 1 and at node 2, zeta value is minus 1. Zeta value is minus 1 over here. What we can conclude? We can conclude that at displacement 1, at node 1, the displacement is Q1. Okay. Again, going back, let us find out. We are having this equation N1 Q1 and 2 Q2. At node 1, zeta is equal to minus 1. You know all this because we have formulated the derivation. So at zeta is equal to minus 1, putting the value of zeta into the respective shape function N1 and N2, we get N1 values are as 1 and N2 value as 0. Now putting the values of N1 and N2 into this equation, we get that Q1 at displacement is Q1. Okay, so displacement at node 1 is Q1, which is validated. Let us look at over here. The value of the displacement at node 1 is Q1. Now similarly at node 2, zeta value is plus 1. Okay, putting the value of zeta equal to plus 1 in node 1 and node 2, we'll get the values of node 1 and node 2 as 0 and 1 respectively. Putting these values of N1 and N2 over here, we can see that the displacement at node 2 is Q2. Now going back to our diagram, the displacement at node 2 is Q2. So this is again validated. Now this is how we can find out the displacement at node 1 and node 2, and also with the respect to as your zeta value we get go on changing, we can find out the values of field variables at various points. Okay. Now this is as per the equation, the displacement of node 1 and 2 are Q1 and Q2, which are our expected results. Now we'll establish a relationship, we'll try to establish a relationship between your zeta displacement and your global variables. Okay, so coming back to the equation, let us go back to this equation, equation number A. So this we have formulated as a establishment of relationship between natural coordinates and your global coordinates. So same equation I have written over here. Okay, so just performing some mathematical tricks, zeta plus 1 by 2 I come over here and writing only in terms of x1 and x2. So x minus x2, x minus x1 minus upon x2 minus x1. Only in terms of x, zeta plus 1, okay, x2 minus x1 plus x1, and after that I just multiply these terms x1 and x2. So I have multiplied it. I took out x1 as common over there, and I have established a relationship as zeta plus 1 by 2 x2 plus 1 minus zeta plus x1. Okay, it should be 1 plus zeta, it should be 1 minus zeta. Now what is this 1 plus zeta by 2? It is our n1 which we have formulated, and this is 1 minus zeta by 2 is our n2. So n1 plus n1 into x1 plus n2 into x2, which is equation number B. So from equation number A and B, we can say that the displacement u and the coordinate x can be interpolated within the element. Now what is interpolation? Interpolation means finding out the intermediate values. So displacement u and the coordinate x can be interpolated within the element using the same shape functions. Using the same shape functions. Got my point? So that is why we can say that this is referred as isoparametric formulation. Now you see this equation n1 x1 plus n2 x2. This is one equation, and this is another equation n1 q1 plus n2 q2. So this equation, these displacements are in your natural coordinate system. These displacements are in natural coordinate system, which we have proved, and these are the displacement x1 and x2 are in your global coordinate system. Okay, if we consider x1 and x2 to be. So with the help of same shape function n1 and n2, we can interpolate the displacement u in the, this is u in terms of coordinate x, okay, within the element, having using same shape function. So this is referred as the isoparametric formulation. So this is referred as isoparametric formulation. So what is the takeaway from today's lecture? First is we need to establish a connectivity between the nodes of various elements. So that is called as element connectivity with the help of nodes. And for that, we are going to use the global node numbers and local node numbers. Second takeaway is there must be a relationship between your global coordinate system and natural or intrinsic coordinate system. Natural or intrinsic coordinate system is again useful to formulate the individual stiffness matrix, and furthermore to combine it as a global stiffness matrix. Okay. Then there comes a concept of shape function, which is used to find the interpolation formulation, interpolation within the element, interpolation within the element. So to find out the values of field variable in between the element, apart from the end nodes, we can use that shape function. Now shape function can be same shape functions n1 and n2 can be used to find out any field variable in natural coordinate system also and your global coordinate system also. Okay, so once you formulate it into a natural coordinate system at individual level, you can easily shift it into a global coordinate system having the same shape function to formulate the global stiffness matrices. Okay, so this is the takeaway from today's session. I hope you got the concept. So this is all from my side in today's session. We'll be solving few problems on the shape function by using different field variables, and that will make the concept more clear about what is interpolation, what is shape function, and what is isoparametric element, isoparametric formulation. Okay, so that's all from my side. Now you can put your attendance in the chat box and you can log off. Thank you.